Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Woodburn Accountants and Advisors China webinar series on achieving China superpower number 3, which is all about strategy, business planning, and budget. In the last 3 days, we've been looking at how to set up a company in China. We've been looking at how to create a business plan, how to create a budget in the Chinese market. And for those of you, again, the numbers have peaked again today. What was very interesting throughout this week's presentations was that actually yesterday, it was very clear for me again to see that budgeting is something that people really fear because we only got 1/3 of the participants that were joining this week's presentations. So I hope those that did join, you will certainly be the ones that get something out of this week's series. For those of you that didn't or missed yesterday's presentation about budgeting, please eliminate that fear. Listen in on the recording. It's not up yet on our YouTube page, but it will be today. But definitely listen into that session. China is the world's second largest economy, and it's an important market for any international company. Even if you're a small player, it's important to think big and have a China strategy in place. It is a common journey that businesses go through, and it is more predictable than people realize. From hundreds of entrepreneurs, companies, leaders from around the globe, we've learned that there are certain problems and frustrations that come along at very predictable times. More importantly, there's also certain ways to overcome them than if you know the journey ahead of you. Woodburn Accountants and Advisors have devised a China roadmap for companies that are looking to grasp at opportunities in China, implement safe and compliant structures, and grow their business exponentially. Each company has their own unique journey in China, but the milestones and the superpowers that have to be acquired are the same. And in this webinar series, we were looking at our registrants and attendees acquiring superpower number 3, all about strategy, business planning, and budgeting. Putting all the ideas onto paper, pen to paper. Developing a strategy, a business plan, and a budget are two very difficult documents to create, but they have to be created and continuously used in order to be able to accelerate one's growth in the Chinese market. Now, in today's presentation, what we're going to be looking at are, for me, the top 10 reasons why some businesses are not successful in the Chinese market. And all 10 reasons are reflected on actually leadership traits that I see in leaders and entrepreneurs that go into the Chinese market. But before we start today's presentation, what I want to start off with, again, a lot of new faces. It seems that there are also a lot of people that were only interested in this session out of this whole webinar series. So I love interacting with people, and I always want to know a little bit more about the background of my attendees. If you would be so kind to let me know, who are you and what are you doing in China? Let me know even very briefly, are you a newbie? Have you found an opportunity in China? Are you searching for an opportunity in China and you're looking now to gain information on how to do that? Are you a startup in China, meaning you've been established for 1 to 3 years and you're looking to get a bit of an understanding on how to improve your business? Or if you're an experienced China hand and you're just trying to get fresh ideas, then let me know who you are. Please do insert into the questions section, who are you? Are you a newbie? Are you a startup? Are you an experienced China hand? For those of you that are new, how this webinar works is that I educate. Education is superpower number 1. It's all about knowledge is power. So I'm here to educate you on what you should not be doing in the Chinese market. All right. I will want to interact with you on this session. I would love to know whether you've made some of these mistakes. I know I certainly have. And I want to use this time for 60 to 70 minutes. This is 60 to 70 minutes of your time. It should be a valuable spend of your time. So please do interact with me. Small disclaimer, GoToWebinar has been having certain difficulties in the last 2 to 3 months with the increase of webinars and registrants and attendees all at the same time. I know it is extremely frustrating when you get kicked out of a system, when the sound system doesn't work. I don't own GoToWebinar. It is just a platform that I am utilizing, similar to Zoom. If you do have issues, I don't know how I can help you because, again, I'm not technically oriented with GoToWebinar, but I want everyone to know this is being recorded. It is going to go up on our YouTube channel. And again, if you do have specific questions about your own situation, let me know and I can help you. Who am I? How can I help you? Well, my name is Christina Kohler-Coluccia. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I have 16 years of on-the-ground experience in China, specifically in Shanghai. I have only ever been in the corporate services sector and compliance sector, helping only foreign investors going into the Chinese market. And I've helped over 500 companies with their market entry strategies, implementations, and growth in the market. And I'm also the creator of the China Roadmap program, which we had a webinar on in March concerning the journey that I believe companies should go on in order to accelerate their business in the Chinese market. In February, I had a little bit of time on my hands, so I wrote a book, an ebook, on the 5 insights to consider for your China business during COVID-19. I think a lot of these things are still very true today. So if you would like to have a copy of the ebook, it's free of charge. Just email me personally at Christina@woodburnglobal.com. The email is on here, and everyone will receive a copy of this presentation as well. So I want to give perspective to people who didn't join the webinar in March on the China Roadmap, so that you gain a little bit of understanding as to why I've created this webinar series, which is purely looking at China's superpower number 3. The China Roadmap is basically a roadmap that I consider that most companies go on in China. And let's face it, everyone that's been to China knows that obstacles arise, roadblocks happen, but you want to minimize that as much as possible. And creating this template, this guide, this map for you to know exactly what you need to do on each step of your journey. So the first milestone is looking at opportunity. Under this milestone, you need to acquire 3 superpowers. One is continuous education. Knowledge is power. You need to find ways to educate yourself on current and up-to-date information. That's 2 very key words right there, current and up-to-date. Don't read articles from 10 years ago. They are no longer valid. Okay? You've got to read and acquire a knowledge level that is current. You've got to do research. Nobody can go into the Chinese market without some stats, some analysis, and some research at their fingertips. Okay? It's impossible because that research and the education that you've gained has to all be implemented into your business plan and budget, which is the focus of this webinar series, superpower number 3, looking at strategy, business planning, and budgeting. Okay. Now, in this webinar series, I've included this title about the 10 reasons why some businesses are not so successful, because whatever you learn from today should go into your business plan so that you don't make the same mistake. Okay? The whole point of this is that you don't make the same mistakes as the people I'm going to utilize in these case studies from today. Okay? The second milestone is implementation. It's all about building your ecosystem, your network of partners, friends, mentors, advisors, who all have businesses and are working in the Chinese market. You then also want to have superpower number 5, which is all about protection, not just for trademarks and patents, but protection for yourself, protection for your business, and thinking about all aspects of your business, whether that means doing due diligences on partners, etc. Superpower number 6 is developing operational guidelines. You want to have very clear and transparent system processes in place, okay? And I say this out of one efficiency point, which is most companies have generally turnover, maybe not every week, but they do have turnover of employees. And if you have written operational guidelines, it is so much easier for new people to take over roles when they have guidelines in place. The third milestone is growth. And again, you know, I wish I had more people attending yesterday's webinar. It just goes to show that is not people's focus. Milestone number 3 has to do with numbers, budgeting, your actuals. And it's something that people just don't look at. It amazes me. I get sometimes a little bit angry and frustrated. I apologize for that. But without being able to read your financial management reports, which I know if you're not a finance person, it can be very scary to do that. You just need to educate yourself or have someone educate you on how to do it. Once you can read your numbers, you can analyze your current situation. Once you can analyze, you can make decisions. Otherwise, without being able to read the financial management reports, you are going in blind and haphazard into your business, okay? So you've got to be able to read your numbers. You've got to be able to analyze your business so that you can focus on growth and accelerate your growth, okay? Now, all of this is not just for companies that are implementing structures in China. This should be implemented as a roadmap for anybody that is also just simply transacting with China. Okay, doing a simple trade transaction, doing a simple service transaction is still critical to create this roadmap and educate yourself. Because I can't imagine that you only want to do one transaction in China. If that transaction is successful, I assume you want to do many more of those and acquire many more clients and build your business and grow it. You got to follow this roadmap in order to be able to do that. So this is applicable to people that are incorporating structures in China, but also to people that are simply transacting in the Chinese market. So what are we covering today? We're covering top 10 reasons of why companies are not successful. And these for me are the top 10 reasons. It's a nice summary outline for you to understand. From my perspective, these 10 reasons all lead to leadership traits from management, from entrepreneurs, from business owners that cause the problems within the organizations, okay? So we're gonna kick off today's presentation. So reason number 1 that people are not successful in China is the refusal to adapt. And this happened to me. So I'm a Hong Kong born European. I started my career off in Hong Kong. What I knew was Hong Kong legislation, Hong Kong regulation. And my assumption was, since Hong Kong is part of China, a very naive assumption back in 2003, that whatever you do in Hong Kong can be replicated in China. And trust me, I made plenty of mistakes that caused financial damage to my first year budget when I entered the Chinese market. And I love this photo because it's very true of what I thought back then. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Hong Kong was running smoothly. My assumption was whatever I can do in Hong Kong, I can do in China. Absolutely false. If you've launched your business in China on the strength of one brilliant idea and the launch has been successful, there's a tendency to feel reluctant to make any changes because that one transaction just was fantastic. And this is extremely common in China, whereby companies replicate their business models, services, their products with the assumption that it will fit in the Chinese market. And they do that because generally the first transaction was so successful. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to adapt yourself. And this comes with everything from Superpower 1 and Superpower 2, which is about educating yourself and doing your research, okay? Refusal to adapt basically meant that when I first arrived in China, I didn't look at Chinese legislation. I didn't look at the regulations about how to run a business in China. That was my biggest mistake at that point in time. And oh boy, did I learn my lesson. Okay, I almost read every single book thereafter when I made that first mistake to make sure I never made a mistake like that again in my business. I want to preempt you. Know exactly all the education points you need to know about legal issues, tax optimization, employment legislation, and then also understand what your competitors are doing, which is all about the research. You've got to do competitor benchmarking. Use your competitors' experiences as your baseline, okay? Do research on them. It's not just about price points. It's also about how they're operating their business. You can find that out through their business licenses and business scopes. You can find that out about visiting their offices a little bit if you want to do that as well, and just simply by talking to people, okay? If you're headhunting for certain individuals, the first place you should headhunt is from your competitors to know how they're doing it operationally. Find out through that route as well. There's so many ways you can gain information without breaking the bank, okay? You just have to be a little bit creative. But what I want to point out here is that you need to create a unique business model and concept for the Chinese market that's going to fit into the Chinese market, okay? So you've got to step yourself away a little bit, be flexible in your mindset, and make sure that you adapt yourself to the Chinese market. Reason number 2 is either too much or too little involvement in the details. And this is sometimes where I get very frustrated, because I'll have companies who nag consistently during the incorporation phase of their entity, but once the incorporation is done, they never contact me again. And that's the point where you should be nagging me the most, is when the company is set up and you have to start looking at the financial aspects, the operational aspects, the protection aspects, and the growth aspects. And yeah, I get very frustrated when companies do that. Incorporation is absolutely vital and important to make sure the structure is right. It is even more vital and important to get your head into the business once it's incorporated. Okay, so what do I mean by too much involvement? Too much involvement means that you are way too focused on the nitty-gritty details and you're not delegating work, okay? If you are not a finance person, you should not be creating the Chinese financial management reports yourself in an Excel sheet. Many companies do that, especially in their startup phases. You should be outsourcing that function, okay? So that you can learn and eventually bring that function back in-house. If you are a Westerner who does not speak Chinese, you should not be developing content that then is directly translated and posted up onto WeChat rooms and onto a variety of different Chinese blogs. You need to create unique Chinese content that is specific to the target market you're going into, okay? Doing everything yourself is something that's very common during a startup phase. People need to realize that they should at least initially outsource, pay for those functions, and at some point bring those functions in when there is a team there to handle those functions. I have a great analogy, which is basically when a ship is launched, you'll probably find the majority of the team members of the ship in the engine room, trying to get the ship started, trying to get everything moving so that there's momentum. But then once the engine room is fine and stabilized, you have your whole team going to their different functions on the ship. The captain in particular, he's going to be on the bridge at all times because he's going to steer the ship upon takeoff, and he is going to make sure that the ship goes and plots its course and follows that course throughout. If you are the ship leader, if you are the captain of the ship, if you are the business leader, you need to have 100% of your focus on the bridge, okay, which is looking at all aspects of your business, not just the core functions, okay? You need to have that complete overview. You cannot do everything yourself. Obviously, I then have also clients have too little involvement in their business, and the types of excuses that I get because of the too little involvement is China's too far away. Yes, I have gotten that. I'm having time zone issues. I'm too busy on other projects. I don't speak Chinese. I can't read the financial management reports. And the list goes on. sometimes these excuses are so shocking that I don't actually give a slap on the face of the client, but I have to wake them up a little bit. The startup phase of your business is what is going to help you create momentum and accelerate your growth. Okay, so you can't just suddenly pay less attention, particularly in that startup phase. Okay, you cannot give an excuse that you can't read the financial management reports. That's just something that I always gets me frustrated when I get a client coming in and saying, I can't read my management reports. You tell me that I have to analyze stuff. I can't. So my first then comment to them is, well, have you had it translated? It never even occurred to them to get the translation done by their own translator in their home jurisdiction, just to know what the numbers look like and what the items look like. Would have cost them less than $100 US, €100 to translate a balance sheet and a P&L. That cannot be an excuse, okay? What also frustrates me a lot is the lack of initiative and proactiveness when things go sour, particularly in moments where there are red flags. Like, for example, your bank account is almost at zero. Why is it at zero? Well, we haven't done any transactions. I don't understand why it's at zero. You need to hop on a plane, get over to China, and understand who is operating your bank account and why there's no cash sitting in your account. If you have employees that are starting revolting or are not showing up to the office, or you're not understanding why you're not getting feedback, you hop on a plane and you fly over to China and you understand what's going on. Now, obviously, under COVID-19, hopping on a plane is not possible. So you do have certain restrictions nowadays in terms of being able to do that. But that does not stop you or prevent you from getting outsiders to come in and help you on that. All right? At a minimum, you can outsource certain functions, like, for example, to a lawyer to say, my employees are just revolting against me. Can you go to my office, sit them down, and understand the legal implications if they keep doing this? Lawyers do that as a service, all right? Go to your accountant or hire an accountant. If your bank balance is at zero or near zero and you don't understand why, outsource the functions to an accountant who takes over everything so that you get back on the right platform and you understand and you have transparency over your business. If you feel that the marketing in your company is not going well, I just had a conversation the other day actually with someone that has a team of people who are supposed to be doing in-house marketing for China. And over 7 years, they just have not achieved the growth that they want to, and even in her opinion, any growth at all. And ultimately, and I'm not a marketing person, but I know enough to say, well, have you been doing this, 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 and this? And then the answer was no. Well, then you've got to outsource those functions to a marketing agency so that you get back on track. Your team is obviously not fulfilling their obligations. You need to be able to react to your business the minute that you have a red flag, okay? Now, it's a balance, right? Spending too much time in your China business or spending too little time in your China business. It's a balancing act. I will openly say that probably in my first 5 years of being in Shanghai, I spent way too much time on HR issues. And it was because we didn't have a proper operational guideline on employment. We didn't have an employee handbook. And I was spending too much time discussing and negotiating with my team. It got annoying because I couldn't focus on what actually I love to do, which was meeting clients and building up my content marketing to get our name and brand out there. It was preventing me from getting that far ahead. So it is a complete balancing act. And it moves me on to reason number 3, which is insufficient care when hiring. And I think this is probably one of the biggest things that happened to me in my early days. I was so focused on budget that I didn't reflect on quality of employees. And a business, it truly is like this. A business is only as good as its people, okay? So the big question that I want to put forward to all of you is, do your employees have the talent, the creativity, and the inclination to help you to take your business forward and accelerate the growth? If the answer is no, you do not have the right people on your team. And you need to change that quick, because you cannot do it by yourself. It's impossible. You need a team of people to help you to move forward, okay? Hiring in China is obviously something that does not sit comfortably or well with a lot of people. And it's a cultural thing, it's a language thing that people just, they're not interested in. And my philosophy back in the day was, I'm in a startup phase and I just don't want to rock the boat. Trust me, I should have rocked that boat initially to get the right people on my team. I was just so fixated on, I want to keep the ball rolling. I want to move forward. I know these people, like I'm spending 50% of my time. I can't afford to rock the boat. My perception back then was so wrong. I should have rocked the boat then instead of 10 years later when I actually did it, okay? And I paid more because I had to pay higher levels of compensation for letting people go that had worked with me since the beginning. So big mistake from my end. A couple of hiring in China. So the first thing is obviously there always has to be a balance on salary and a balance on quality. Tip number one, if you want to look at salary budgets, definitely go online, Google in salary guidelines for China. What will pop up is probably 5 to 10 different companies, headhunting companies in China that produce free online salary guidelines. Some companies even do it on a quarterly basis, so it's actually really up-to-date information. And for all different sectors and not sectors, for all different positions, whether that's in manufacturing, service, finance, marketing, sales, IT, security, etc. You'll find the full list there, and it always helps to have a guideline, okay? That's tip number one. Tip number two, please write down very clearly what you want in an employee. Create your own job description, okay? That is so vital to put down on paper, and that should also be part of your business plan when you have your section on employees. What type of people do you want? What functions do you want to have in-house? And what capabilities and skill sets should these employees have? Okay? Without writing that down, when you do the interviews, you've got no idea what to ask to prove that they have the skill set that you need. So write down that JD and make it very clear. Now, we all know, if you're a startup, you don't have the budget to hire 10 people from day one. We all simply know that. So probably you'll have a budget to hire one additional person. You need to evaluate what that job role is. And if it's going to be multitasking, so this person should do a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, and a little bit of admin, then you need to, in the interview process, clearly state, if you want to work for me and you want to help me build this company, you have to be flexible. All right, and you have to be able to do these 3 roles. If you are not transparent with your employees about this, they're going to be so unhappy down the line that they might leave you. It's not just about the employee trying to sell themselves to you. You also have to sell your startup to the employee, right? So it's very important. And even for the China experienced hands out there, you still have to convince someone to work for you. Why is your company great? What advantages are you going to give them, right? So keep this all in mind. Now, one tip I will give as well is that, and again, I made this mistake with my first employee that I ever hired. I placed too much trust in them. And I got very much let down 8 months later. So you do have to be careful in China, if you're a newbie or a startup, to place too much trust in someone from the get-go. I believe now that trust is built over time. And trust can only be built when you prove to the employee what you're trying to build and when the employee proves to you what they're capable of doing. Placing it too much on day one, a little bit risky, because you don't know ultimately if you should be trusting them or not, okay? That's all about protection. So when you're hiring people, make sure you have a force field around you to protect yourself and your company in case these first few employees that you hire go sour. because you place maybe too much trust and too much loyalty in them. Another tip that I have is that when you are recruiting for someone, do not stop receiving resumes. I have consistently, and my head of client services as well, has consistently an updated list of resumes that are in our drawer in case we need to terminate someone or someone is resigning, that we readily have a pool of resumes to go to call, to have interviews, or to see if there's interest if someone wants to work for our firm. It's our backup plan, okay? The reason why I say this is because, first of all, when someone resigns, it's always a little bit shocking and throws you off course. You have basically a 30-day notice period, which means 30 days to recruit someone new, bring them on board, maybe do a handover within 30 days, okay? Most of the time, it's not even possible to do it within 30 days. But if you've got a backup plan of resumes in your drawer that you can reach out to the day the person resigns, or at a minimum the next day, and you call 10 people and you organize interviews within the next 48 hours, you will have a clear picture of what's happening, okay? And what's available on the market, the talent that's available on the market, etc. So keep receiving resumes as your backup plan. Reason number 4, number blindness. And honestly, yesterday just proved it to me. People are so scared of numbers. I mean, honestly, I had a third of the amount of attendees and registrants for yesterday's webinar on budgets. Okay, you need to have transparency in your numbers. It's superpower number 7. Without knowing your numbers and being able to read your financial management reports, how do you move forward? I mean, that's just, I'm not here to be sarcastic or rude, but how are you able to move forward? And if you ever tell me that you've got your numbers in your head, you do not have the exact numbers in your head. The exact numbers will come through on a financial management report, okay? You cannot make sound decisions without knowing the exact numbers for every line item. So you need, and if you're not a finance person, then the first thing that you have to do is you've got to find yourself a finance person. And please don't hire a junior accountant. I mean, hire someone who's knowledgeable, okay, who can help you build your business. You want to have, so one thing that I always tease some of my friends who have been so stingent about their budgets for accountants, I say to them, do you prefer to have a bean counter that sits at the desk and just inserts numbers all day long? Or do you want a finance person who's a visionary and can guide you with the numbers to tell you, this is the current situation, this is where we're going to be in 3 months, what should we do? And be proactive with you and actually get up off their desk, go to your office and say, here's a red flag. You want the finance person to give you all of that. And you're only going to know that through the numbers, okay? How do people know about kickbacks? Through the numbers. How do people know if there's going to be someone, taking money through a transfer, which happened to a client of mine where transfers were being made on a monthly basis to a brother of one of the managing directors? Through the numbers. If you don't read your numbers, how do you know that any of this is happening? Those are red flags. So you have options for this. If you're not a finance person, then number 1, utilize the finance team in your head office. Okay, that if you have that ability, you're fortunate enough, you should be proactive and emphasize you need that. Tip number 2, either outsource, which probably in the early stages is what I would recommend to anybody, just to get the ball rolling and get you off your feet. Please choose service provider that is very proactive with you. If you are outsourcing it, you should be proactively asking for phone calls on a monthly basis, because financial management reports are produced on a monthly basis. And in your startup phase, as I highlighted yesterday, you should be looking at your actuals against your budget on a monthly basis. Number 3, if you're hiring in-house, do not hire a cashier or a junior accountant or a personal assistant that has a tiny little background of financing, okay? Hire a qualified individual that has between 7 to 10 years at a minimum of experience working in a foreign invested company that has maybe a little bit more of experience in the mindset of working directly with a Westerner so that they can help you and they can guide you. If you are an entrepreneur and you don't have a financial background, please outsource it. And I mean, if you are a Westerner, don't outsource because of budget to a local CPA firm where they barely speak English. How does that help you? Okay, the communication aspect is really the most critical aspect. You've got to be able to have open communication and transparency with that accountant. Okay, so if you go with a local CPA, by all means do it, as long as you have a very good, transparent, and clear communication with them. If you are planning on setting up a joint venture in China, one of the mistakes, and I don't know if there are going to be a couple of these clients here on today, one of the mistakes that I have seen in the past, and I've seen it with two JVs, is that the Western part, so the joint venture contract clearly states that an outsourced financial firm or an in-house financial person can be chosen by the Western firm. Okay, it says it in the JV contract. However, they never fulfill that article. And what happens, again, because of cost, is that the Chinese joint venture partner convinces the Western partner by saying that it's a budget issue to just utilize the accounting team that is in their Chinese company already. I'm leaving a little bit of a break there to let that sink in. So what do you think could happen? Well, in one company, what happened was that the accountant made a mistake of doing a 500,000 renminbi transfer that was supposed to be for the Chinese partner's company and not for the JV. So you saw money coming out, huge red flag, and suddenly money coming back in. Other things is confusion, lack of clarity, and absolutely no transparency to the Western partner. If you go that route, set very clear operational guidelines on what you expect from that accounting team. Okay, if that's the route you choose, do it, but then take that extra step to actually write down operational guidelines that would be necessary. Okay, point number one, we need everything to be in English or bilingual. Point number two, we want to have copies of the financial management reports and all tax declarations that are done. Point number three, we want to have a phone call every month to make a review in case any adjustments have to be made. Point number four, we want to see the charts of accounts that the company has generated, and we want to understand what goes into each line item so that we have a clear understanding of what each line item entails. Okay, these are just 4 points already in an operational guideline that you should have. But it's very important to have clarity and transparency on the numbers, okay? Reason number 5 is all about market assumptions, okay? It pays to know your market, and this is, again, is superpower number 2, it's research. It's the difference that will be your route to success. Most businesses launch with some idea of who their customers might be and who their competitors are, but they rarely do an in-depth market research. And most importantly, they launch their businesses without having concrete stats and background information. And what this basically means is that when the time comes for growth and for acceleration, you're going with a scattergun approach because you're not sure really what will work. You don't know what your competitors are doing or how they might outbid you because you haven't done your background check on them. All right, you need to be very focused. You need to know exactly who your customers are in detail. Write down to even what they're saying about you on social media. You have to do some form of brand awareness. Do people know you? And if they do know you, what are they saying about you? The same about your competitors. I think it's really important to know what people are saying about your competitors. Are they getting positive comments or are they getting negative comments? Okay, all of this will make a huge difference to your route to success. And I can't emphasize more how important it is to not just do these market assumptions when you're first entering the market, but to do it continuously. All right, you've got to do your benchmarking studies, if not every 12 months, at least every 18 to 24 months. So you get updated on what is going on in your market. I went over in the last 2 days all about business plans and budgets. And I've created here another list of chapters that you could put inside your business plan. Just means you're extending it a little bit. So, you know, the 10 points I've put here are looking at the current environment, competition, money, financing, technology. Do you need to protect that technology and that know-how? What is the future potential? Legal and tax compliance issues when operating, looking at your customers, looking at potential challenges, like who could have ever predicted COVID-19, but it's causing a lot of challenges to a lot of companies. So, you know, the challenges aspect is all about scenario building. And then obviously your goals. What do you want to achieve in the short and in the long term? Reason number 6 is looking at control freak leadership. I'm also at fault with this one. I hate delegating. But I do believe this statement. So I'm always in a contradiction with myself. You've got to be able to empower your staff in China step by step and encourage their activity. So as I was saying, one of my own mistakes was that I didn't hire the right person from the start. My first 8 months were a living hell. And then I lost my confidence when I started hiring new individuals. And I became a complete control freak where I never delegated work to them. And I never asked them their opinion. And that is actually what led me to probably 5 years of turbulence with my whole HR issues. Completely, I've grown up and I've matured. And all I can say now is by empowering my team, I have gained a lot of new ideas, a lot of fresh ideas. And some of them have been absolutely fantastic. Some of them have been rubbish, but I have been open to listening. Just like me, when I come up with ideas, some are great and some are not so great. But if you don't have this open communication with your team and you don't encourage them, then they will probably look elsewhere for more motivation and learning abilities. So I can't emphasize this more. You've got to step away from the control freak leadership and empower your team. One thing I highlighted in yesterday's presentation about budgeting. Budgeting is a fear for everyone, even finance people. You know, it shouldn't be actually. But I think if you're not a finance person and you have to put a budget down on paper, utilize the team that you have. So, you know, if you are looking at revenue levels and you've got a team of salespeople, have, I don't know, a 5-hour power out with them and say, let's do a couple of projection, guys. What's in the pipeline? What will come in the pipeline? When do you think these things will happen? Have this brainstorming session with your team divisions to understand. And I say this particularly for entrepreneurs and startups where you probably won't have such a big team. So you may actually want to involve everybody in these discussions, sit around a boardroom and go through what are the projections. You can even then give this to them as a project. Create a PowerPoint presentation and give me an action plan for the next 6 to 12 months of what you think sales revenues are going to look like. And how are you going to achieve them? And what does it mean by adding staff members? Well, we have to add staff members. You can give it to your team members as a project that might give you ideas on how to put things on down on paper. Again, I highlighted it here, you got to do this step by step because maybe, you know, with some brand new staff, you don't want to give too much trust away. But you know, the Chinese know better than, if the Westerners are on here today, quite frankly, my team knows more than I know. They're the ones who are educating me on a lot of the legislations and regulations and the corporate services industry and what's happening at the tax bureau. They are my link to that whole arena. So they, by far, they know more than me. And it's my job as a leader to get that all out of them, that they share, that they're proactive with sharing, that they share with each other. And you have to act as that leader. So you can't control everything. You've got to be able to empower your team to do that. And I can tell you, they really, really enjoy doing it from what I've seen. So the key point here is adaptation. What you're doing at home will not work in China. You've got to be able to empower your staff and know how to move forward on that. The next point is marketing bias. And this is something I highlighted under the budget webinar yesterday. A lot of people underestimate how much they should budget for and in what they should be marketing in. Digital marketing is obviously a very big thing. It might not fit every sector or every industry, but definitely it's one thing that you have to look out for. Now, under COVID-19, if you guys are on my mailing list and you've seen what I've been doing, now is not the time for me to keep a low profile. I want to be in the forefront of everybody's mind when they're thinking about China and getting into China, which is why I am marketing the hell out of everything. And I'm doing all of these webinar series one after another in order for me to truly be in the forefront of people's minds during COVID-19 and then coming out of COVID-19. The same principle should actually be for all of you as well. You want to be in the forefront of people's minds when things start opening up. You don't want to keep a low profile. You shouldn't be keeping a low profile. So there has to be a significant chunk of your growth, of your entry budget on marketing, okay? And again, you know, there are different things that you can do with your marketing. You can have a Chinese website, you can have a Chinese WeChat account, you can be on all different types of social media platforms and blogs to share content. You can also create focus groups to learn what the Chinese like and don't like. Now is the time for you to either strategize on that and understand it more, or actually implement it. In order to implement it, you really need to go with the experts. Either hire a true expert for your industry or sector in-house, or go with an outsourced provider to help you do that. Reason number 8 is cultural diversity. Now, this was pretty easy for me because I'm Hong Kong born, lived and grew up in Hong Kong my whole life. So when I relocated to Shanghai, I did not really have such a, what would you call it, a cultural impact on me. I was kind of used to the Chinese culture. I knew how to communicate with the Chinese. It was not something that truly impacted me. So this reason didn't occur to me, but it does happen to a lot of leaders, a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs. China is a very unique market culturally and from all aspects culturally, whether it's the food, whether it's the activities that they do. I'm not a karaoke singer at all. My children now are a little bit older. They don't even want to hear me sing anymore. So karaoke is something I never did. I just didn't like it. I had to go though. I had to go to many evenings doing karaoke. I had to make a fool of myself. And that's something that people just have to go ahead and do. The food aspect, so critical in any type of business environment, going out for a lunch or a dinner. You have to try what is in front of you. If you don't, it really could impact the outcome. I probably would say less now than it did before, but it still has a big impact. They want to see you try stuff. And quite frankly, if you would have a Chinese team of people come out to the UK, I'm pretty sure they don't necessarily want to eat fish and chips, but you would be proud if they ate the fish and chips. It would make you proud, right? So, culturally speaking, you've got to be able to adapt yourself in the Chinese market. Now, if you are a Western firm, a Western brand, and you yourself as a leader are a Westerner, one thing I want to truly emphasize on this is don't underestimate you. What I mean by this is that you should be at the forefront of the marketing, okay? Even if you don't live in China. I can tell you right now, if you are looking to sell into China, you can have a local rep that does a fantastic job to get inquiries, to begin conversations, but what will actually close the deal is if you fly out and meet the people directly because they want to meet you, all right? It is an amazing outcome what a foreign face, as well as being the big boss, does when you're looking to close deals. So don't underestimate yourself when you're trying to start up your business in China. Adapt yourself to the market. I know not everyone wants to travel in China, not everyone wants to tour around China. Now people actually can't do that, but previously, you know, with the food aspect, traveling internally within China, it's not everyone's cup of tea. I realize that. But in order to accelerate the growth of your business, don't underestimate how much you are needed as a leader and as a business owner to close deals. One of my most famous phrases with my children is sharing and caring, and I have now incorporated that commandment into my company. Sharing is caring. Might be a little bit of a contradiction because I did say earlier that you have to take things step by step in terms of building trust and loyalty. But in the end of the day, you need to have with your team a very collective vision. And if you don't share that vision, you won't get that collective feeling from your team members. Lack of vision is absolutely something that creates obstacles along your roadmap. You need everybody to be on board. The only way for everybody to be on board with your vision is if they know what your vision is. Where do you want to bring this company in 2 years' time? Where do you want to bring this company in 4 years' time? Where do you want to bring this company in 6 years' time? Having that vision is vital. So one of the things that I highlighted on Tuesday's presentation in the business plan is that you need to write your vision down. So this is a bit like a workshop exercise. Take a pen and paper and write down on a piece of paper, where do you see yourself in 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, 12 years? And you need to get your team members on board on that vision. Vision is something that can be very airy-fairy if you haven't written it down. It can be a mumble jumble in your own head when you're trying to then communicate it. So definitely write it down or create a presentation on it so that you can collectively share that to your team members, to your board of directors, to highlight the direction that you want to go to. Your team members want to have a certain level of transparency, okay? And they want to know where the company is going. They also want to know if there's a future for them in this company. What you also want to garner is proactive sharing by them, ideas that they might have, new operational guidelines that will improve efficiency. Your team are doing the actual work. Without your knowledge of what they're actually doing and the obstacles that they are themselves are incurring, never be able to improve your operation either. Okay, so it's really a two-way street where you should be sharing the vision of the company. Your team members should be sharing as well the issues that they are incurring currently that might prevent you from achieving your vision. Okay, it's all about communication. So make sure that you get in front of your employees and you develop that. Reason number 10 is fear. A bit like yesterday's presentation when not so many people showed up, fear on numbers, fear on analysis, fear on improving things, fear on actually sitting down and getting things you don't like to do done. All I can say to you is the following. Communication, and that's probably, I hope, something you've all realized out of this presentation. Communication is a value that you should achieve within your organization. You should be communicating with your team members. But on top of that, get help, okay? I know that there is a cost component to getting help. I have learned that the hard way. I should have gotten help prior to even setting foot in China, and gotten advisory and educated myself, and paid a little bit of money for that instead of actually the exorbitant amount to get me out of the trouble that I was in. All right. You've got to build your ecosystem. Superpower number 4. Build a network of individuals that can help you. In that ecosystem, you will have your team members. You will have your board of directors or investors. You will have friends that are living in China. You will have the chambers of commerce that are all there to guide you as well and introduce you to people and refer you to people, but also expand on your education. You should work with service providers. I've got my lawyer speed number on my speed dial. You know, have lawyers on hand, accountants on hand, auditors on hand, headhunters on hand. Marketeers, the list goes on. Okay, build that ecosystem so that you will always, when you see a red flag, or when you are hit by an obstacle in the roadmap, you have someone to turn to straight away that can help you get out of it. It will speed up the process, accelerate your growth. Okay, so please, I understand that there is a certain level of fear. We all have currently fear under COVID-19. Our main concern is to make sure that we remain profitable and we don't have to close down our businesses. But build your ecosystem, build your network, get introduced to people so that you have those people in your system if anything were to occur. Knowledge is, and learn from the market, your people, your advisors, the greater success you will have in the market, okay? Just ask me something. Okay, enjoy. Apologies, I still have my kids at home. If you're feeling frustrated by the inability to grow your business, you've got to ask yourself honestly whether any of these traits or these reasons that I highlighted today, whether they apply to you. Okay, you've got to ask yourself that question. If they do, right, make it part of your business strategy to address them. Put it in your business plan and make vast use of the resources and experiences that's out there to help you. Remember that the bigger your business grows, the more people benefit from it. And last but not least, don't feign disinterest or ignorance, okay? Make sure you are aware of what's going on in your company and you can highlight all the aspects. So this is the last session in today's webinar. Again, I just want to highlight once more about the China roadmap, what it means, what you've got to do, and you know, what superpowers you've got to acquire in each stage. How we can help? Well, we can put you on the China roadmap program and give you guidance along the way. We can also help you with incorporation advisory or transaction advisory. We can also validate your business plans and budgets. In that regard, we do a lot of back and forth question and answers, acting as your, I guess, trial before bringing it out to the investors or the board of directors. Obviously, within corporations in both jurisdictions and services that involve implementation and growth. So if you would like to book a strategy session with me, or just talk more, or have a brainstorming session about what's going on, I am going to add here the link to set up a meeting. Happy to talk to you. Please don't be shy about this. It's a complimentary session, no strings attached. It's just a way for you to brainstorm a little bit about how you want to go into the market. You can also email me directly. I'm going to add my email into the chat box as well. Or if you like, you can add me on WeChat. My WeChat ID is my name, so you can also just add me there and we can chat on WeChat. So let's move ahead and start asking some questions. I hope some of you have asked questions. So Lionel asked, is there a big difference in the way financial information is displayed and published in China compared to what is done in the US or Switzerland? Absolutely not. A balance sheet is a balance sheet, a P&L is a P&L. There are, however, slight differences under the PRC GAAP system, which is the financial accounting system, okay? But how a balance sheet looks like, how a cash flow statement looks like, or how a P&L looks like, it is absolutely the same whether you are in the US, Switzerland, Europe, etc. There's absolutely no difference. Is that the only question that's come in? Everybody else is so quiet today. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds in case you do have something more that you'd like to add. That's it. All right, then we'll move on. So again, if you want to set up, if you're too shy to publicly have your questions answered and you want to talk privately, again, book a strategy session with me. Happy to talk to you about it. We have events coming up, and I forgot to update the slide, and I apologize for that. So on May 6th, I have an event organized in conjunction with the Australian Chamber of Commerce that will be actually on this topic again. So if you want to rejoin that presentation, you can. The link is on, I think it's on our website. On May 7th, I'm going to do a second part to a summary of the policies created by the Chinese government during COVID-19. I'm also going to be adding additional slides to the one I did in April. If you want to join for that one, you can do so. The link is on our website. And during the May holiday, I will be posting up our May webinar series where we will be looking at all accounting and tax information that you will need to know when going into the Chinese market. So we will be looking more at milestone number 3, which is looking at the numbers and analysis work so that people can move forward and make decisions. So stay tuned for that. There will be newsletters that go out about that event as well. So, you know, you can also just wait for the newsletters on that. I will also be conducting a workshop in June. Unfortunately, that won't be free of charge. It will be a full day workshop where I will be requiring companies to have an upfront conversation with me, joining the workshop, all about putting pen to paper and going through developing your strategy for the Chinese market, and then doing a follow-up call on that on the next action plan that they should take on. So stay tuned for that workshop as well. I want to thank everyone for joining me today, for joining me this week. For those of you that joined all 4 sessions, well done you. It's great to have the recurring people coming on. I want to wish everyone a fantastic May holiday. The public holiday in China is from May 1st to May 5th. So we'll be back online on Wednesday if you do want any further information. Take care. Have a wonderful remainder of the week, and see you all again very soon. Goodbye.